Hey guys, it's Dark Siege. Afonso has dropped and people are doing early test results on him. And the question is he fire or fraud? I don't know. We're going to talk about it and we're going to check out a new DPS chart I put out just to give you some foundation on what's going on. So here's my plug and then we'll get into it. If you've ever maxed a commander that has turned out to be horrible, please like and subscribe. All right, Afonso, let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about, just to give some perspective on something I didn't understand, was his third skill, and I might butcher this, the Hormes 6. Will you get it only on skill proc, or will you get it when he does his 400 damage, that's the instant proc? Okay, I want to go over his third skill real quick. I'm going to butcher this, but Hormes 6, right? It says, whenever this troop commander deals range skill damage while in range mode, it takes 5 less damage for the next 10 seconds. And you can do this for 4 times, so you can essentially get 20% less damage. Okay, it doesn't just proc off your skill proc. I tested it out. Let me show you. I took John and Afonso out for a little spin against some barbs. And it's easy to kind of show you how quick you can get it. Turn 1, I actually hit it. And you can see right here where it says damage received, -5. So keep watching that. So on turn 1, let me show you. Let me pop it open. Sea of the Lion popped, right? And that's that 400 instant, which is awesome. But what that does is it's skill damage. And it shows you that it's going to trigger the next turn. So you don't get it the turn you trigger it. It's the one after. So you go to skill 2, and then it shows you here, just right in the early lines. But if you want to know when it's triggered, you go to the very end, right? This is turn 1. At the very end, it shows you that it was triggered. And then on turn 2, you'll see it in the first narrative. Okay? As you go on, okay, you can just hit your turns and see how quickly it can happen. Okay, I'm hitting 8. I popped it again, which means on 7 it popped, right? Which you see there, okay? Which, cool. Now look at turn 10. Well, let's go to 9. 9, I -10 receive damage. Turn 10, cool. Turn 11, -20. What? So that's what I like. You can actually pop off and get 2 of these in one turn. So I just wanted to show you that for that skill, I got it popped off as early as skill 11. I'm sorry, by turn 11. So that's pretty good to get -20% damage received for a lot of turns. It doesn't help your DPS output, but you take a hell of a lot less damage. Okay, let's go back. The reason why I wanted to point that out is 1, I didn't know. And 2, when you take less damage, you're not showing DPS. So it may have a big impact. So let's go into my little DPS chart here. Okay, this is a DPS chart only, and it doesn't include any other buffs or debuffs. Some commanders might appear weak, but due to other factors, they rock. The whole thing I'm trying to show in this is to understand short fights versus long fights, and another term that I'm going to refer to as clipping, like clipping your DPS. But let's go through some defined terms, okay? Short fights, or range short, is DPS cycle stops after the first active skill props, okay? So if you look at the third line here at the very top, it says range short, and then it has underneath that in the first blue column on the far left, 1200 to 2500, right? And then you have 383. And then on the next one, you have 0.7, and then you have 1,250 to 1,380, and then you have the DPS ranking. Okay, so what I'm showing you is on that particular commander, the one that has 383, which just happens to be Gajah Mada, if he gets stopped, like on a cheeseburgering situation where he's firing at the person cheeseburgering and he's at range, and he pops off his active skill, and then the guy goes back into the city, all he did was 383 damage. You know, whatever it's scaled to that. Versus, he's out, someone comes out of their city and they're fighting, and then Gajah Mada gets off his full complement of damage, right? He gets his active skill proc, which is a 383, and then he gets it for 4 more turns, right? Because he takes 5 turns to get a full complement of his DPS. Well, then that's where you see where it says DPS ranking after range long, 2.5 to 2.7. So basically, every 500 points of damage is 1 point, right? So 2 points is 1,000, 3 is 1,500, right? That's kind of how I went through to try to to try to show numbers on a chart of what DPS looks like. And also on that green line, it says 2.5 to 2.7, right? The reason why that is Gajah Mada has another factor of skill damage that I averaged out over 10 turns. Everybody's averaged out over 10 turns. That could change, right, depending on how fast they do the skill cycle. So that's why I put 2.5 to 2.7. If you look at melee numbers are always going to be higher, right, because they typically do more damage at melee. And so if he came out, same green line, Gajah Mada, at 683 damage, and then he went through his full complement of damage at melee, he's between 2,500 and 2,633 on average, right? So 5 to 5.2. Now, if you look at the second line, which is 1,200 to 2,500, that's not Afonso, but Gonzo. So at 1,200, right, there's only one enemy he's shooting at. That's 2.4 when he hits his active skill. And it scales, right, to 2,500 if there's multiple targets, right? There's 3 targets. And obviously that number even scales higher, right, on all the other factors that's going on. Now, if Gonzo goes through his full complement, it's still 2.4 to 5 because all his damage is done in one hit. So that's why you see that. So I just want you to understand what we're talking about when we go to the next one, right? So you have, let's starting with the very top, short range, which means you only pop off your active skill that one turn, and you get your DPS ranking. Then you have long range, which is you go through all your skill cycle to get your full complement of DPS. And then you have the same thing I show in red there for melee short and melee long, okay? Now, going down to where you see in my little brand symbol of DS, it says clipping. DPS active skill is not fully achieved, right? So the good example is Gajah Mada, the one in green at 383. If he pops his skill cycle and only gets that one turn of damage, that's 383. His damage has been clipped because he didn't get to his, 1250 or 1380 of damage that he could have got. So on short fights, people's damage are going to be clipped who takes multiple turns to have their damage to completion. So hopefully that makes sense. And I think this is important. The reason why is you have 4 types of fights, as you see here. You have range short, range long, melee short, and melee long. And we often say, hey, we don't have a lot of we don't have a lot of melee fights. But I gotta tell you, it's very rare that when I go out and fight, I don't want to say rare, but it's often enough that when I go out and fight, I get sad-faced and go back, right? At some point, either I miscalculate and I get hit. Maybe that's a skill issue. Maybe I suck. But as it turns out, I think a lot of that happens to enough people where you're like, yeah, that happens, right? Maybe it happens 1 every 10 times I go out, right? Or maybe 2 or 3 times every 10 times I go out, right? Like, it happens enough that I notice it. So I put that there because I wanted you to know. And the second thing, the last couple KVKs I've been in, we have been in situations where there is a lot of cheeseburgering by the enemy. A boatload. So much that it has literally impacted the way I think of Siege doing damage. And maybe my sample size sucks, and that's not the way it is for everybody. So I'm genuinely curious, do you encounter at least 25% of your KVK is cheeseburgering? People, not you cheeseburgering, but people are cheeseburgering and your siege trying to shoot them. I would honestly, I'm not trying to get like, oh, please comment, like, so I get some push and some algorithm. I'm genuinely curious. If you get that, please comment like, yeah, man, I see 20 to 30% or 40, like whatever it is, but I see it all the time. All right, let's get going here. We're going to be, this video is going to be long. All right, so I have this in green, and in the next one, it's going to be in yellow. Why? Because I love both colors, and I wanted to show it to you. And look at the very top, please. It says DPS only. This is average additional DPS, not including damage mitigation, right? Or buffs or debuffs. This is straight up. Look at Gonzo, the first line. He does 12 to 24. He has an AoE of 3 people. And on melee, he can get plus 200 for 2 turns, right? So I didn't count melee really. I did on the end there. I only put 1 turn in. But you really get what I'm talking about. Afonso, I added him at plus 400 because I truly think you'll get it off at least in the first, 8, 9, 10 turns, right? On average, you will anyways, and you might even get it twice, right? But I wanted to be very conservative. Babar, you can see that he has a 500 damage that happens, and I did it averaged of every 10 turns, which is like 330. John, skill damage proc, 320 on average. Steven, 200, 200, 210, right? So I tried to do all these so you got an average to kind of see what we're talking about here. Okay, so when you look at the DPS chart, like I said earlier, for every 500 damage, it's 1 point. So if you look at Catherine, right, almost at the very bottom, the first purple one, she has 500, and that gets 1. And then for every 100 point after that, it's 0.2. So I didn't calculate 20 of the 620, if that makes sense, right? So the same as Narcissus for 600 is, 1.2, and her at 620 is still 1.2, right? I didn't want to get that crazy with it. Again, I want to mention there's damage mitigators that will increase people's damage. And we're going to go through this, but Gajah Mada is one of those. Margaret is one of those, especially when she is paired with Gonzo. Okay, here's the elephant in the room for what I'm concerned. Had I made this video yesterday, I would have told you Afonso was a gift from the dev gods. Truly, I would have said that. But Dark Siege, why do you hesitate now? Damn, you guys got good questions. Well, if you're locked on to me as a content creator, I'm damn well sure you're locked on to Mr. Siege, right? And I think I've made it very clear that I try not to watch other people's videos who are Siege because I really try to get my own perspective. And I can tell you by watching his video, I have been fucking influenced, right? If you haven't seen it, please stop watching me and go check out his video. I truly want you to. At least you can hit some of the highlights. And if not, let me tell you what it is real quick. Per his videos, Afonso kind of sucks, right? And let me set it up real quick. He did 2-minute battles, and he did it at full strength as far as numbers, right? And in those, Afonso did very poor as far as his DPS output. And before seeing that, I have already made videos like, oh, I got a new toy. I literally had a different thumbnail. I was going to make this video yesterday, but I was fucking tired. A different thumbnail, and I'm going to show it to you later because it's worth showing that, like, oh, he's going to be fire or something like that. And versus the one I have now, fire or fraud. Okay, so why did I think Afonso was going to be such a badass? And I'm not saying he's not right now because I still think there's a lot of testing that needs to be done. But if Mr. Siege's 2-minute battles, it's one battle only, right? So you got to, but if that's reflective at all of what he's going to be, then he's going to be a flop. And now in the slide before, or 2 before, I talked about how he takes 20% less damage. Maybe that's a saving grace that we're not calculating, right? I have found that, and remember I showed you there's short range, long range, melee, right, cheeseburgering, long fights, like all the stuff that I was trying to tell you before that if you look at one type of fighting under certain conditions, it will give you a result. And if you have those same things, you'll get that same result. And my understanding is those fights for him, Mr. Siege, have been really reflective of the commanders. So I'm not taking anything away from that. I'm just saying that hopefully somewhere, I feel like Afonso's my child that is in a science fair that makes a volcano, and I want that to be number one. Like, I really want Afonso to work, right? So I'm going last ditch effort, saying that, hey, maybe in the field, his 20% less damage that he starts taking is going to be such an impact that this dude fucking rocks. Because instead of seeing the DPS just output, the ratio that we used to get might look a lot cleaner. Okay, enough of that. Let's just go through it, and I'm going to show you why I really had high hopes for him, right? So if you look at Gonzalo, right? Line number 1 of our commanders. If you look at his DPS ranking, he's 2.4 to 5. Skip Afonso and go to Baybar. The next one is 2.4 to 3. And then in between there, you have Afonso. And he's 4.2. That's where I really thought he was going to come out strong with his DPS. At a 4.2, right? And he has decent skills, as far as attack. He's got some health. Then he gets 10 attack, 25 health, whatever it is, right? Like, I'm somewhere in there. Or maybe I got it reversed. But either way, his numbers on DPS look pretty damn strong, right? And he's got the tanky skills, a little bit of attack skills. He's taking less damage, right? So to me, this dude should be fire. And so I'm a little confused, if I'm being honest with you. Okay, so let's go through this. I got a guy, Mario, in my kingdom. This dude rocks it, man. He's got Baybar with Gonzo. And he turns out some crazy reports. And the reason why I mention that is Baybar and Gonzo is consistent, right? If you look at the numbers across the board here, look at Baybar, right? 2.4 to 3, 2.4 to 3, right? And 4.8 to 5.4, 4.8 to 5.4. He's consistent because he does, for the most part, all his damage in one shot, right? At least at 1200. And then he's got the extra, 500 he gets occasionally, right? And he's got that 50 points of rage after a skill drop, right? For 3 turns. So he kills it. Out in the field, Baybar and Gonzo kill it. So many different fight styles. And when you see the short, the cheeseburger, and all those other things, the DPS makes sense. If that even makes sense. Okay, so then let's look at John. John comes in at 1.8. Steven comes in at 1.6, right? You could almost say that is almost so damn close, right? And then you have the end of John, right? If you're looking at the melee long, 3.2 to 3.8. And then Steven is higher at 3.8 to 4.2, right? If you look at the range long, I'm kind of going out of order here on John, it's 1.8 to 2.4. Steven is 2.4 to 2.8, right? And then I have it at the end of the video, a build for Steven. I have both builds. But the skill damage tree looks like it's pumping out more damage, right? So maybe Steven is the bomb. I, in an earlier video, said, not this guy. Maybe it's that guy. I don't know. All right. Then if you look at the damage that Archimedes does, right? Short fights, he blows, right? He only does 400 damage. But on longer fights, he gets up to 1,200 damage, which is a 2.4, which ranks with Baybar, John, Steven, and Archimedes, right? Like, that is right on par. Same with Gajah Mada at full strength. Same with Mary at full strength, right? So you see this, and that makes you understand why in long fights Archimedes is good, right? Gajah Mada is good. Mary is good on longer fights, right? Because that DPS starts pumping out. The things that you have to consider is when you get hit or swarmed, or you have those other mitigating factors through their skill tree or through their talents that make them better. And that's why I'm telling you that I think this chart is helpful. It makes you understand what's going on, but DPS alone does not make a commander. I'm going to say it again for and when we did training, you repeat things. DPS alone does not make a commander. Yeah, DPS alone does not make a commander. And so that's why Archimedes looks good, man. He looks really good for a KVK2 commander. And for a KVK2 commander, he's good. But he does lack depth, or more depth, in his skill talents, right? So that's why I think, if I remember correctly, like, he gets swarmed, he's going to get killed, right? Same with Mary. But if they are untouched, they're going to kill it. And like I said earlier in the video, like 3 out of 10 times, I get fucked up, man. I get sad-faced. And so those numbers may be way worse on Mary and Archimedes than it would be for a Gonzo, Afonso, Bobber, John, Steven, right? Gajah Mada for sure, right? Because you look at the supplemental stats that they have, they are strong with some of these commanders, right? Or they have a lot of mitigating factors. So I'm trying to get you to understand on short fights when you're not hit, long fights when you're not hit. These are the numbers, man. And this is why a commander can look really good, but when you get them in the field, you see some variation. Like, why weren't they as good? Huh? It's because of the other complement of skills that they have or don't have. Their depth is weak. All right, let's go to the next one. Next one's going to be like this in yellow. Oh, let me go back one. It's the same thing. I just really couldn't decide between which two. It's the exact same information. You got both. Okay, so I think it's fair to go into some Gonzo pairings and then go into Afonso pairings. Because I think this is what I looked at, right? So I'm going through my thought process for you. I did a previous video on commander cycles, and this is like prep for, like, hey, you got a DPS chart, you got commander cycles, right? You start looking at everybody's individually, you can start making, hey, I think this guy is good or bad as a pairing, right? Maybe not. Okay, so when I look at Margaret and Gonzo, right? Gonzo, look at, you got the short, the long, the DPS, right? You look at their ranking numbers. It's not crazy, right? And compared to others, it's lower. And this is what I say, DPS alone does not make a commander. Margaret can really, really help a smite commander. If they have high damage, then because of his AoE, that's what gives Gonzo that high damage. Because of Margaret's complement and depth as far as boosting range normal damage, which is insanely good for smite, that's why this pair looks weak here on paper, but they're really good. But I want you to understand, if Margaret's DPS gets clipped, she's dog shit. And what makes up for it is Gonzo if you get to his turn to proc, right? So if someone cheeseburgering and Margaret procs, and then the guy goes inside and Gonzo does not get his proc, right? Because it takes a turn, a pause, right? Say it pops off on 10, 11 is just white damage, and then 12 now is Gonzo pops off. You have that one pause in between. If Gonzo doesn't get his shot off, that report's going to look like dog shit, right? Because Margaret's DPS got clipped and Gonzo never got a chance to hit his. All right. Gajah Mada and Gonzo. The numbers here, same again. The same issue we have with Margaret getting the DPS clipped, so can Gajah Mada. So in short fights, which, like I said earlier, I see a ton of, it's almost like sickening how much I see, the DPS can be clipped. And I want to show that to you so you understand what the impact of DPS clipping looks like. So it can get as low, again, that's if Gonzo even gets his off. It could be low as 0.7. But if Gonzo does get his damage off, and you get 3.1 to 5.7, depending if there's multiple enemies in shot of Gonzo's AoE. And in melee, it gets stronger, obviously. And actually, Gonzo can get stronger in melee. And Gajah Mada has crazy stats to help out. I believe he's the one with a shit ton of health. All right. Earmuffs. John and Gonzo. Like I think I said earlier, John's the child I want to do so well that it may blind my judgment. I'm 100% admitting that. I want John and Afonso to work so well. Even though we're talking about Gonzo, I have Afonso on the mind. In any event, We'll look at those numbers later. Here's this one. 900 on John for his short, and on his long, he's 1220, and then Gonzo, right? The numbers speak for themselves. Again, this is a representation of what it looks like when we're looking at numbers only. Here's Gonzo and Baybar, and his numbers are strong, man. They're consistent. They're consistent in short fights and long fights, provided both get them off. Bobber doesn't need, like Gajah Mada, to go 5 turns to get 1200. Baybar can pop it off on that first hit of the skill cycle. That's the difference I'm trying to get you to see. All right, Afonso pairings, DPS highlights. Here we go. So Margaret and Afonso, the reason why this isn't as busted as you see with Gonzo, and if I screw up names here, like if I call Gonzo Afonso, please just follow me as much as I can, is Margaret's DPS boost is because of the smite. It looks like, if you were just look at but Margaret's a skill commander. She is, but because of her synergy with specifically Gonzo, damn, it's insane. I don't know if you get that type of synergy with Afonso, and I'm almost thinking you don't. But here it is. She can get her damage clipped, like we talked about earlier, and these are the base numbers. Steven Afonso. For Steven, I have the skill tree at the end here, just so you can see the makeup if you need to see how to make that up, if you want to put Steven like that. Cool. Here's the damage, and looking at Mr. Siege's video in that 2-minute battle, Steven came out pretty strong, right? I think of the commanders, he was one of the strongest. I think Margaret came out stronger. I'm sorry, Margaret came out really strong with Gonzo. But Afonso, right? But here, I'm just showing you what this looks like. Steven on paper doesn't look that strong, but he comes out pretty strong. John Afonso, this is the child that I want to do so well. His numbers, okay, with the new crystal tech, and people can get full complement of troops, right? The full 400 and change. Longer fights obviously help John, right? If you have somebody who's doing under 50% troop capacity, they're doing 40% more damage and taking 20% less damage, right? Because Afonso's going to get there pretty quick, as I showed earlier. So in short fights, a 2-minute fight where you're not getting everybody down and getting the full health of that, cool. But with that being said, how quickly does someone at 50% actually get killed? And then sometimes when people are at 50%, they turn around and leave. So you may not even get a shot at that. I think you see what I'm getting at. It could be well when it's used, provided it's used, because not everybody's out there with 50%. Some people stay, but some people leave. All right. I think you get it. Afonso and Bobber, I want this pair to do well. I would have thought it would do very well because of the skill cycle, how fast it goes with Bobber after the active skill proc, and the consistency with damage. And maybe that will be the case later on. It doesn't show it right now with that one fight that Mr. Siege had, but this is what we're looking at. So if he does turn out very well, like Bobber and Gonzo is a very strong combination. And I'm hoping this can get somewhere near that. Okay? Gonzo Afonso. Man, look at that last number in the corner, right? Where it says you have my little symbol at the top row, range short, DPS rank, range long, DPS to go all the way bottom. 4 to 9.2. This is a long fight at range. This is why I was so pumped about Afonso and Gonzo paired together. And people were even asking me, how much more DPS? I was like, 15% more DPS. Like, I was so, because I looked at the percentages of Afonso, Gonzo, and Afonso and Gonzo and Gajah Mada. And I was so hyped for Afonso coming out. And I still hope somehow in battle, long battles, I don't know. I'm still hoping somehow this works. I don't know if it is. If not, it's sad that it's not. But let's keep going. Okay, so I put down the different combinations. Like if it's Margaret with Afonso with Steven, John with Afonso Baybar, and Afonso Gonzo. Those are what the numbers look like at DPS and DPS alone. And I was hoping that these DPS combos were reflective of how they were going to do in the field. And as it stands now, it looks like Afonso Gonzo kind of sucks. So that's why I'm confused. That's why I was so hyped when he was coming out. And he's going to take 20% less damage. Like, I don't know. I guess this happens when guys come out and they suck and there's hype around them. And on paper, fuck, man. This looks awesome. So I don't know why, if he does end up sucking, why it is. But, whew. All right, let's look. All right, so I took the time to find a Street Fighter background because I was literally thinking who was going to be better. Gonzo with Afonso or Gajah Mada with Gonzo. And right now, it still looks like, Gajah Mada Gonzo is like way ahead, way ahead of Afonso. But I made this little thing and I wanted to show it to you because, I made it. And I'm almost sickened to think that Afonso's not going to be good. And so I hope somehow in real battle, it may take a couple KVKs to flush him out, but we'll see. Here's the numbers, right, that I was looking at when you paired these two together, right? Afonso with Gonzalo and Gajah Mada with Gonzalo. And here it is, right? Like, if you look at these numbers, who looks better? Afonso does, right? I know you got buffs, right? Like, I'm not... Like, I know there's buffs that Gajah Mada gives, right? And obviously, it surpasses right now, anyways, what Afonso's pumping out. But I really thought the two AoE commanders were going to do it. So, hopefully, something changes. I don't know if it will, but... Dude, it ain't looking good right now. Okay, if you are going to put Steven first, I would say the community believes that the skill build is the best. And the reason why I phrase it like that is I've not really used this build. It may be absolutely better. I just put John in first, but maybe I'll switch that up and see if I do better. But I think it's fair for me to present it to you. I don't like presenting things I haven't worked on myself, but this is what a lot of people in the community thinks is the best if you're using Steven. So I wanted to show it to you, the skill build. I actually changed it recently, but here it is. Here's the old build, where basically it's rage versus DPS, right? And this is not uncommon. I may actually make a video on this subject in and of itself. But what you get out of this build is a boatload of skill damage bonuses, right? I think bunch of, like, it helps skill damage a lot. And you get a rage on your 5 of 5, right, at the very top of the skill tree. And rage is it makes it cook, right? Makes it cook. What you're giving up is your forbearance, right? That 50% normal damage bonus, right? So, just a heads up, that's what a lot of people are rocking right now. So this is what I was gonna use as my thumbnail. Afonso will be fire, right? Or Afonso is fire, right? I already had it made up, and I was gonna pump it out. This was what the thumbnail was gonna look like, and that's why it says Afonso fire or fraud. I was gonna go fire or fake or flake, right? I had a few of those, but I'm not saying I'm a little depressed over it, but I'm real disappointed right now at the preliminary reports that are coming in. I'm in KVK. We have a past 7 soon. We'll see what that's like. Sometimes there's a lack of fighting in past 7. Hopefully it's not like that, but somehow I think it is. And then we bump to King's Land around the 1st, I believe. And that'll be the first time that I get some real good looks. Hopefully we get good looks and long fights to really get a feel. Man, you really got to get in fights, short, long, to really feel how a commander is going to do. You got to get swarmed every now and then too, right? Like, those numbers are always so high in the beginning until you're sad-faced. And a lot of times those numbers are still positive. Right? And after you do a number of those, you're like, dude, this guy's pretty legit. So we will see. Let me know in your comments if you think, if there's any saving grace for Afonso. Like, hey, I think if this occurs or that. I am truly so far frustrated, maybe a little disappointed in Afonso, but it's been very early. Yeah, him one test fight, but it seems like those numbers have pretty good indicator what he's going to look like from Mr. Siege, right? So let's see what happens, guys. Usually I say range rocks, but I feel like a little disappointed. So here we go. I'll see you next time. Range rocks. Bye.